Okay, now we are ready to print. So we've come into the printing room, which is all the way at the end of the print department. And I'm gonna set up on any one of these tables. I've chosen this one. Underneath this table are the services for printing. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull them out so you can see that they're coming from under the table. They come in two pieces. There's a solid board, and then there's a board with clamps on it. Okay, and you just want to make sure that your two pieces fit together like a puzzle, so that these movable parts fit into the indentations on the solid board. I'm going to scoot it all the way to the edge of this table, and I'm going to take clamps, which are located in the bin that say clamps by the sink. So I'm going to continue to clamp my pieces, and I want at least 3 clamps. 4 would be preferable. So I'm clamped down on this side, and then I have maybe 2 more clamps on the large part as well. The very first thing I need is a spatula and a mixing bowl for mixing my inks. Then of course I need my inks. I want all the colors that I'll need, including transparency, okay? So if you're gonna use white, which I plan to, then I want to make sure to use transparency. So my first layer is gonna be black, and my second layer, which I'll demo next, will be a light blue. So we definitely need the white pigment and the transparent pigment. I want a proofing sheet, so you can purchase this from the print store. This is just a less expensive piece of paper that we're gonna make sure that everything looks good, because we don't wanna waste our very fancy, nice paper. We want our paper for editioning. Remember, if I said the edition is 8, I have 12 sheets of paper here. We want our squeegee, and I know that the squeegee is the same width or larger than the width of my image, all right, so I've measured that. Of course, we have our screen. We're gonna go ahead and set that up. Oh, and we need tape. So I'm gonna go into my drawer where I know there is tape and get that out as well. And scissors. Okay. So we have our packing tape and scissors, and I'll explain why for all of these things. And then also our transparency, which we're going to use for registration. I'm going to go ahead, and then I always, just to be safe, I like to have a rag that's damp, sort of on hand, standby, just in case there's an ink spill or I inevitably get something on my clothes, you know, that kind of thing. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is tape up the screen. I always tape the face of the screen, and so you will remember from our coding that we didn't fill in the entire screen, right? That coder didn't go into the whole side. So you have to cover that up because we don't want ink coming through. It's gonna get everywhere. It could be a complete mess. So we'll find the edge of this tape. Found the end. So I'm gonna tape the front side, all 4 edges. And actually, like usually the emulsion goes all the way to the top and the bottom, but I don't even care, I'm not gonna risk it. I'm gonna tape all 4 sides, front only. So this is also an opportunity, you know, if something crazy happened, like a piece of emulsion came off or some weird blemish, you can cover it with this masking tape, but hopefully you don't need to. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sides ready? Okie dokie. Now, making my screen go as I will see the print. So facing down the front of the screen flush. I'm going to lift up the clamps on our screen printing board, and I am going to go ahead and tighten the wing bolts and keeping my screen in place. So now I know that my screen isn't going to move once I start printing, which is what you want. And when I lift it up, I'm hands-free. So I'm forward and down. Now, another note. This is the same as everything else, but we're going to wipe off this board before we get started. Just never know. It's been sitting for the summer. You don't want any dirt, unnecessary dirt on our nice paper. there. Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and do our very first print on our proof, and then but first I'm gonna show you how to set up for registration. So everybody's gonna receive a piece of Duralar, and I've cut it to be about the same size as the face of my screen. I'm gonna lay it down, kind of eyeball where it is gonna fall underneath my image so it's centered. And I'm gonna take a wide piece or 2 pieces of masking tape and create hinges at the top of my registration. So there's not like a great way of doing this without making a mess, but what I've learned is that I'm gonna take another piece of stock paper and kind of put it up here, and you will see why. Okay, so my Duralar is taped down, and I am going to print my first proof first. I'm gonna put it right on top of the Duralar. And I can see now, because there's no ink, that it's on my paper. Not worried about registration. All I wanna know is that the image is coming out clearly, and sometimes it takes a couple of times in order to do that. All right, so I have my plastic bowl. It is very important that we do not get in the habit of pouring our ink directly from the container onto the screen. This is because you guys should mix colors. There are so many color combination potentials out there, and you don't want to be limited to your primary colors, which is how you're going to purchase your inks. So please, what we don't want to see is our very first critique where every single secondary color is a primary and you didn't mix it all. Just really think about what color can do for you, your print, and your content. All right, so I'm gonna pour some of my black ink into my bowl. Taking care not to let all of the splattered ink. And from here, I'm going to pour a fairly generous channel of black ink at the top of my image, somewhere between the top of my image and the top of my frame. So this is a little bit like that emulsion coating where you need more than you think. Okay, I have my squeegee on hand, and I'm gonna show you how to make a print. So I'm gonna hold the squeegee with both hands always, and I'm gonna put the squeegee to start with in between the channel of ink and the top of my frame. I'm gonna hold the squeegee at 45-degree angle, and I'm always gonna print by pulling the ink towards myself. I have the most strength going towards myself than pushing away. And I'm gonna heap really firm, direct pressure going all the way down the image. Okay, so that was one print. Now this is the hard part. This is called flooding, and I'm gonna do this in between every single print, no matter if it's a good one or a test one, to make sure that the ink doesn't dry inside of the screen. So I'm gonna lift the screen off of my image, and before I even look at it, I know you're excited and curious to look at it, I'm gonna take very little pressure. So I'm just skimming the surface with my squeegee and putting the black ink back on top of the image in a very thick pile. So I shouldn't be able to see my image at all now. My screen is completely flooded with that black ink going back in the direction. This is doing two things. One, it's keeping your screen open, meaning the ink that's in your image isn't gonna dry out while you're fussing around with your next piece of paper. The second thing that it's doing is making the ink at the top again, so you're ready on your next print to pull the ink back towards you. Ooh, and I forgot a squeegee holder, which we're gonna get right now. So now I'm gonna look at my print, I'm very excited, and I'm gonna put my squeegee, oh thanks Stevie, in a squeegee holder, which Stevie made, and they're amazing, and there's somewhere to put your squeegee now. Okay, so I'm gonna take a look at my print, and it printed great. There's no problems. One pass of ink did awesome, so I'm super happy about it, and I know that I can move on to my edition. So I'm gonna register first. Okay, we're gonna leave that over to dry. It looks like that was dried ink. I'm like, oh, ink. Okay, so the next print that I'm gonna do is onto my Duralar. And it's very hard now that my screen is covered with black ink to see where to even put my paper, because how will I know it's in the center? So I'm gonna first print on this transparency. So I'm gonna do exactly what I did before. which is lay down my screen down, take my squeegee, 45-degree angle, firm pressure, lift up gently before I even look. I'm gonna flood. Lay my squeegee down, and here I can see what my image is gonna look like on the Duralar. So I'm gonna take one of my fancy pieces of paper that's ready to be printed on. I'm gonna go underneath the Duralar, and now I can see how my image is gonna be centered. Now, you can be as precise as possible at this point. Take a ruler. You know, if you don't have a clear border, measure to make sure. You have a little bit of time, not a lot, but you have a minute so that you can make sure that it is exactly where you want it to be. Okay, once it's where you want it to be, you're gonna flip this up. That's why I have that other piece of paper there, because this is going to make a mess on something. So we'd rather it to be on paper instead of the table, which you have to clean off. I'm being really careful not to move my nice paper. I'm gonna take masking tape and create corners on at least 2 of my corners so that I know where to put every single piece of paper down, and I know that I'm gonna put it in the same exact place every time. So you can see why it's important to cut your paper to the same exact size. What happens if you cut your paper wrong or incorrectly or not precise enough? Every single time you lay it down, the image will be in a slightly different place. That might be okay with a 1-layer print, but now you're going to 2 layers, 3 layers, 4 layers, and it's just gonna get more and more confusing as you go. So we're trying to avoid that. All right, my paper's ready. I can leave my Duralar right there. Screen's coming down, and I have an addition. I have 6 pieces of paper, so I'm just gonna go ahead and print them all. Before I get started, I'm gonna recharge my ink just a little bit to make sure that I have enough. Anytime that you have any solid or big open sections, it'll take more ink than you realize. So I'm just gonna make sure that I have some extra and some on hand in my bowl. Okay, it's nice to have the whole rest of your table so that if it's just you printing by yourself, you can put your finished prints over on the clean side of your table as you're rearranging. Okay, I'm ready to do my first print. Go ahead and flood. Looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and print all 6. That was my last print. So I'm not gonna flood my screen again. I'm gonna go straight to cleaning. So the nice thing is that if you had a color black, if you have a lot of ink left over, you're gonna wanna save it. So I'm gonna scrape in all of my excess ink back into my bowl and eventually back into the jar. So I'm gonna do this first. And then I'm gonna take this to the sink and wash off my screen. And I'm gonna make sure that I'm using screen cleaner and a sponge, because especially black loves to stain. Staining is okay, but we don't want any ink clogging any of the holes of the screen, so for the next time that you wanna do a new image. Okay, we'll be right back for layer 2.